Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. As always, we come at you 5 days a week. We're off Wednesdays and Thursdays during the season. Excited to be here. If you missed the live show, you can always catch the replay. So remember, if you're here, great. If you're not, we'd love to see you later. Love when we comment in the chat room. Love to occasionally take comments when we can. We can't always, but sometimes we do. On Mondays, we bring in Anthony Cervino. We'll come in today and talk some of the week 5 takeaways. All right, here we go. Start out 49ers. Oh my goodness. We thought we were hoping to have a great game between the 49ers and the Cowboys. I wanted it. I think everybody else likely did too. Even if you're a fan of one team or the other, we really wanted a primetime slugfest shootout, but it didn't happen. 49ers just mopped up the Cowboys every which way. And the Cowboys are trying to send pressure, but Kyle Shanahan was ready for it. He understands that Brock Purdy's got to continue to get the ball out quickly. The scheming was perfect. It always, Mahomes always is. And, you get no individual player besides George Kittle aside from quarterback really went off, but they all did their job. Christian McCaffrey was less than 3 yards per carry, but he gets in the end zone. Jordan Mason, it was all in garbage time, which was fine. Debo involved, puts up 85 total yards. Brandon Ayuk had a 40-yarder called back the penalty. That would have put him right around 100 yards in the game. But other than that, it was just surgical. And funny with Kittle only had 4 targets. All 3 of the catches he made went in the end zone, but Purdy was surgical. Purdy just, again, it's perfect. He is perfect for this offense. He delivers the ball. Yeah, there's occasionally some balls that are underthrown or a little off, but he's gotten away with it, and they're so explosive on offense. It's fine. And, of course, we know they have an outstanding defense as well, so there is usually a little bit of margin for error. And so that'll be interesting. But, look, right now, if the NFC Championship game was played tomorrow and on a neutral field between the 49ers and the Eagles, personally, I would favor the 49ers. And here's the thing. I love the Eagles. The Eagles are playing great football. But ultimately, Morning Albert, Kyle Shanahan versus offensive coordinator Brian Johnson. Maybe Johnson gets better with the Eagles over the season. But right now, Shanahan has the answers. Brian Johnson is getting results. But if they play the 49ers defense on a big stage, I don't know that he's going to have the answers or the adjustments because the 49ers can make a good offense look mortal. And that'll be interesting to see. And the Eagles, that offense right now, that defense, again, I don't know if they're going to fix their issues up the spine in the passing game. The run defense has been great this year. So anyway, if I'm putting them on a neutral field, I'm saying 49ers -4 right now. Both teams are, haven't suffered a loss yet. This is going to be fun to watch. Cowboys. This is tough. The narrative on the Cowboys is they wilt in the biggest of games, and that hasn't always been the case. But more than not, in last good number of years, on a big stage, they often come up small. Yeah, they beat the Bucs in the playoffs last year. There was that, but that was the end of Tom Brady. But man, and they hung competitive with the 49ers, certainly, but not last night. 10 points on the board. Dak throws 3 picks. And after, look, Dak has always been a very good quarterback. And last year, he had that horrible interception season, but we know there were a lot of tipped balls and misplays. And, we gave him the benefit of the doubt because Dak's been a strong professional. But man, 1 touchdown and 3 picks against the 49ers. This was not very, very good. This was not a good situation for them. And Tony Pollard, 8 for 29 on the ground, got a little bit done as a receiver. But again, they're playing, a borderline elite defense. Maybe they are elite. I think they are. I think they're in that neighborhood. I don't think they're this world-crushing defense like, the Ravens that won a Super Bowl a long time ago. Yeah, Uncle Ted, you're right. Right, we gave Dak, the broken thumb last year. Of course, you got to give him a little latitude for that, right? Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you forget about that. This time just passes by so quickly. You forget that some of the injuries that these great players play through. So Deuce Vaughn got a few kids. They're on garbage time. Morning, Charlene. So, Deuce Vaughn was garbage time. The game was over. He got a few carries late, so nothing there. CeeDee Lamb, he tried to, when the game was out of hand in the second half, he tried to battle a bit and had a few nice catches, but again, not much there. At this point, not quite sure what to do with Brandon Cooks. Last year was a disgruntled employee in Houston. I thought that coming into this offense, it'd be great. We talked about a few minutes ago that if the 49ers and Eagles put in a neutral field, and I mentioned the coaching disparity between Kyle Shanahan running the offense and Brian Johnson running the Philly offense, Mike McCarthy is the same thing. I mean, Mike McCarthy's playing checkers while these other guys are playing chess. And, he can puff up his chest and spout out all he wants. And he won a Super Bowl. God bless him for that. But he is not able to compete with the upper end coaches in the league. If you had to start Jake Ferguson, you live with the 3 for 28, but I was recommending people not to start him last week. Fred Warner patrols the middle of the field a lot, and it was going to be really tough, for him to get like major production. So if you had to start him, that works. But Jake Ferguson, otherwise, you're continuing to start him. He has 7 targets in 3 or 4 games. When they get in the red zone, which wasn't last night, he sees looks there. So Ferguson will be just fine. All right. The Bengals, Joe Burrow strikes back. He looked good yesterday. A few throws, it left a little bit off him, but it looks like the calf is getting better. It certainly helps. And people were asking me start-sit questions. This is a good question I had, and I had 2 different people. They go, Josh Dobbs or Joe Burrow? Because Burrow had like 8 fantasy points a game over the last 3 weeks. It was a good question. But I said, look, Burrow said he came out of the prior game better with his calf than he had. I bought that. I did buy that. And he did look better. And of course, they're still getting the ball out quickly. They have, with the calf being an issue, there were a couple plays where he held a little longer. But look, we said this in the pregame too, pregame show on the start set. Jamar Chase was going to get a ton of targets. And my goodness, 19 of them. And there was a deep pass too. So there was that. So we saw Burrow at least get a deep pass in there too. But Jamar Chase, we thought DJ Moore was the week winner. Nope. Jamar Chase had other plans. He went over 50 fantasy points, whereas DJ Moore, I think, was 49 PPR points or something like that. But that was it. And no T. Higgins. So if you're box score hunting and you're going to see Trenton Irwin popping up with 8 for 60 on 10 targets, just understand he was the replacement for Higgins. Tyler Boyd saw his 7 targets and did okay with them. Joe Mixon continues to compile. 29 touches, he gets to 94 yards, doesn't find the end zone, but it's good enough. You're expecting RB2 production out of Mixon at this point, and that's what you're getting. He's playing about 75% of the snaps, and, he's getting work. And what more, you hope eventually he has the big game or the end zone becomes, something more common to him. But yeah, right now, Joe Burrow, for right now, it appears he's well enough. Can he have a setback on the calf again? Yes, he can. But for right now, I will advocate trusting him. I moved him down to like quarterback 13 before yesterday's game. He throws for 317 and 3, so he did better than that, but had to be safe. But I think I'm not going to put him as a top 4 quarterback for a while. I'll put him in the top 7 because I think he earned his way back there. And of course, we'll look at opponents, and they do have a bye coming up in a couple of weeks. So I think that certainly could help him as well. Miami. Oh my goodness. So, look, 31 points. It's fine enough. And, and I had bet over 30.5 on this. I think I just nicked that one by a half a point. But anyway, the bigger point is Tua made some really big mistakes. They were in the red zone driving at the end of the first half, and he throws a 103-yard pick six, 102-yard. Guy was in the end zone, throws it to him, takes it all the way to the house. It was just horrible recognition. And he had another awful interception in the second half. He just, I don't know. When he gets pushed to his second read, he's not the same quarterback. It's somewhat consistent. If teams could disrupt that first look, it's a problem. And if the Giants were able to do that, that's a little bit scary. But look, they get bailed out because they have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. They have a track team. And that track team can put points on the board in the blink of an eye. And that's a beautiful thing. And we saw it yesterday. Devon Achane just completely did it again. Mostert was fine. 10 carries, 65 and a touchdown, but not Devon Achane. I'm sorry. Devon Achane good. Achane 11 for $151. I mean, this is ridiculous pinball numbers. He's put up 3 weeks in a row. I believe it was 8 carries last week, and he went off. And then of course he had the 230-yard game a couple weeks prior. What do I say at this point? You have to. How do I put him as anything other than a top 8 running back? The volume is the only thing, because maybe there's some weeks where he doesn't break the big run or two, but maybe he does it every week. We know that run scheme is sick, and we know that defenses are on their heels because of the speed of all the other players. So once Etienne hits a hole decisively, good luck catching him. So yeah, right now you have to play him as an RB1. You have to. And I don't think he needs more volume. Again, there's going to be some down games. Even the great ones have those. But Etienne's the deal. We know that. We've seen it. You can't watch it and unsee it. He's perfect storm for him. Tyler, I don't think we'll know the status on Justin Jefferson for a bit. It's possible I think they're doing imaging today. So usually we get those. Usually we get those on the same afternoon. So we probably will get that before the Monday night game. But that would probably be the scenario. Otherwise, certainly he's not practicing Wednesday, I would imagine. That would be kind of a foregone conclusion. But the imaging results should come in. So hopefully that ends up well for Mr. Jefferson. I know that's the injury didn't look horrific, but it looked like it definitely was a problem for him. All right, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like or subscribe button if you're on RotoWire or YouTube. Also, if you use Twitter or the X, if you could give me a follow at Jim Coventry NFL, would greatly appreciate it. Try to post pertinent content throughout the week. Try to help you be most successful in your fantasy football situations. Anthony Cervino will be coming in soon. We continue to break down week 5, and also we'll be previewing the Monday night game. Brian Pope, Kittle did save you last night. Very nice. Yeah, he saved a lot of people. 3 touchdowns on 3 catches. Albert, Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs. So the whole thing with Doubs is he has seen, I think, 25 targets over the last 2 games. Maybe it's 27. He's seen a lot of targets. And the Packers were chasing in both games. So the first 2 games, we saw Jordan Love throw less than 30 passes. That's what Matt LaFleur wants. But then the 2 games in you're chasing, you have no choice but to throw, and they did. I don't think the Raiders have much of a chance of blowing out to a big lead here. And so I think that the pass attempts are going to be conservative. I think we're going to see like 30 pass attempts. So if it's 30 pass attempts and Christian Watson, assuming another week back, they put him in, they get him limited snaps, but 11 days, 12 days almost, which is a Thursday to a Monday, I would guess Christian Watson's a full go. And if the pass attempts are low, let's say that Doubs still out targets him. Let's say our targets of 8-6. I think I'm going to go with Christian Watson there, because Nate Hobbs, the corner for the Raiders, is out. And when they got Marcus Peters, he's had his best days. He's a gambler. That's not what you want on Christian Watson. So if you need the 10 points, I would be more inclined to start Watson, because I think his potential to score a touchdown is higher than Doubs. And that's what I would go on. All right, let's talk about the Jaguars, the London game. The Jaguars, they came out slow. First half, I was thinking to myself, not again. By the time the game was over, man, the numbers were there. This ended up being a very nice second half shootout. Trevor Lawrence gets his 300 yards, just throws 1 touchdown. The touchdowns have just not been there. But Travis Etienne carried the mail. He really came on. 26 for $132. He finds the end zone twice, including a spectacular late run. Also, another 4-catch game, 48 yards through the air. So that's 180 total yards. And remember, we said before the season, he didn't have more than 3 catches in a game last year. I want to say this is his 3rd game with at least 4. So I was very hopeful that Doug Peterson would ramp up his usage, and he did. And Etienne is the guy. Anthony Cervino, welcome in week 5. Crazy. Let's talk about the Jaguars right now, Anthony, but tell everybody what's going on, and we'll fit it. We'll talk on the Jaguars a bit.
No, doing great. Happy to be here despite what happened to my Cowboys last night.
Oh, it was a rugged one. And we can circle back.
I'm allergic to Dak.
I'm done. My gosh. Yeah, I think a lot of people are allergic to Dak, but the 49ers defense is not allergic to Dak. Oh my gosh. Scary, dude.
Yeah. Just a quick tidbit on that. Like, it seemed like Vegas, it was a 3.5-point spread. And it was in San Francisco. Vegas thought Dallas was going to be in this game, but they don't even look like they're on the same stratosphere in terms of where they are as a team right now.
We can come back to the Jaguars. Let's talk. So earlier in the show, I did talk about the game a bit, and I circled to the 49ers. But obviously, them and the Eagles are both 4-0. And the 49ers are dominating every game. I don't think maybe 18 points, maybe their smallest margin of victory. And the Eagles, they're getting better each week. If they play each other tomorrow on a neutral field, what would you personally make the spread on this game between the 49ers and the Eagles?
On a neutral field, I would give it a favor to the 49ers by 3.
Oh, I said 4. Perfect. We're on the same lockstep there. Yeah, same lockstep. Yes, we're right there. Same thing. I thought the same thing. And what it came down to was Kyle Shanahan running his offense versus Brian Johnson running that offense. He's still learning. Maybe he gets better, but I don't trust that he's going to have the answers. And I think there's more ability to attack the middle of the field on the Eagles, where the 49ers don't have a definitive weakness on defense. Any other words there?
No, and that's kind of shocking because, the 49ers losing as many coordinators on both sides of the ball, but especially on defense the past few years, they just keep going. And now they bring in Randy Gregory.
Oh, my God. Just so they needed more juice. Oh, insane. Dallas. So is this, all right, fine, you'll make the playoffs, you'll be a wild card, and hope your first game is easy, and then when you play one of the big boys, you're done? Is that what we're looking at?
The thorn in the Cowboys' spine, one of them is Aaron Rodgers, the other has been the 49ers. I believe Dallas can go toe-to-toe with most, but for whatever reason, the Kyle Shanahan 49ers, they have Dallas and they have Dak's number. And if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, injury-wise, I think they need to make a move.
What about Mike McCarthy? I mean, look, I get it. He won a Super Bowl. I have not been a fan of his work since the Super Bowl. He got to be really predictable with the Packers. I think he is a huge liability for that team. Do you see it differently?
I like Mike McCarthy. I'm a Mike McCarthy guy. He's had success, but whatever's going on, they score a lot of points. And on paper, what people don't realize, the defense has scored quite a few touchdowns this year. This Cowboys offense has not looked in sync at all this season. And it's crazy to say because when they're winning, they're dominant points-wise. But, the defense has scored one or twice in each of those wins. And again, offensively, something looks off. And it's crazy because they brought in Brandon Cooks.
Right. So we talk about defense. And what I've been saying for the last couple of years is it's nice to have a great defense. But at the end of the day, if you're playing a heavyweight offense, the defense doesn't even matter because a heavyweight offense is going to score their points. If you even put the old Ravens with Ray Lewis out there, heavyweight offense are going to score their points. Thoughts on that?
Just watching the game last night, the key to that game, and I think Mike McCarthy should have been more aggressive. Like you can't trade field goals with touchdowns. And you had to know the 49ers, they're really hard to stop no matter how good, like you're saying, how good that defense is. You need to be more aggressive. And the Cowboys were not.
No, we're not. So anyway, hopefully the Cowboys can figure a way to regroup. But right now, this is a definite clear line of delineation in the NFC. We got the Eagles, we got the 49ers, and after that, people are going to be battling to hopefully reach that tier. But right now, probably not so much anytime soon. So, Anthony, I was talking about the Jaguars a bit. Another sluggish start, but they ended up being just fine. And they got their big guys going here. Etienne, 180 total yards. He's caught last year was 3 catches per game maximum. And now he has 3 games with at least 4. So that's been ratcheted up. Cashes in a long touchdown late to kind of put the game away. What do we see with Etienne?
This is the game that could have been the coming out party for Travis Etienne. Now, things went in Jacksonville's favor, and I'm a Jaguars guy. I think they're one of the top teams in the AFC. And despite their little bit of a sluggish start to open the year, but like in terms of Travis Etienne, what he managed to do, dominating the workload, Tank Bigsby, I know he had some fantasy hype, only a handful of touches. This should be Travis Etienne's backfield, and I know the perennial narrative on Doug Peterson. He likes to use multiple backs, but I don't know if he's ever had a back this effective as Travis Etienne. And as Travis Etienne goes, we obviously see greater play from Trevor Lawrence, and he can distribute the football better.
In week 1, we saw Etienne 18 carries, 5 targets. Week 2, 12 carries, 3 targets. It's ramped up. 19, 20, and 26. Last year, when we had 2 or 3 high volume games, he ramped them right down. But for the most part, 4 or 5 games, it's at least 18 carries. So Doug Peterson, as you're saying, he has understood this is our guy. We need him in there. Calvin Ridley, he had 3 down games. He had 100 yards and a touchdown in the opener. Goes over 100 here. 122, catches 7 of 8 targets, even chips in a couple runs for 14 yards. Is he back on the grid?
I mean, this is the Calvin Ridley that I hyped. I was really, really into Calvin Ridley in this offense. And I think 3 out of 5 games, he's either gone for over 100 yards receiving or scored a touchdown. So I know the big number games, he's only had 2, but he did score last week as well. So I think it's only a matter of time before Calvin Ridley emerges. I think he could be a top 5 receiver in fantasy football for the rest of the way.
You know, and I agree with you. I really do think, though, that I don't know if Doug Peterson stepped in yesterday in the second half, because I know the offensive coordinator, it has not been a stacked up set of offensive plays leading to consistent success. We saw that Ridley can stick the out route 10 to 15 yards, the dig route in, and those levels. And Lawrence is perfect at those, but they go away from those at too many points in time. And I wonder if in the second half, Doug Peterson maybe asserted his will a little bit, because the offensive coordinator, I've not been impressed, but we'll see. But I think Peterson really needs to get a hand in this. That's my personal opinion. We got the usual solid effort from Christian Kirk. Evan Ingram, first game under 49-ish yards, but he did get 4 catches. So even PPR, he gets you 6.8. And for the tight end, that's a down game. That's not so bad. Trevor Lawrence, only 1 touchdown, but he goes over 300, runs for another 30. How you stacking up Lawrence? Quarterback 7 the rest of the way, better, worse?
I mean, I think he could be comfortably in that 7-8 range. I thought at one time in the offseason, Trevor Lawrence could be in that top 5 to 6 conversation, but not with the way Justin Herbert. To me, it was either Herbert or Lawrence. It looks like Herbert's probably the guy who's going to be in that top 5 when it's all said and done, but I don't view Lawrence that far away either.
No, and I think the touchdowns will come. Again, I really do think that they got to figure out something play calling wise, because the play calling is not overly inventive. But again, Peterson at some point, we know Peterson can do it. So, he has to understand the big picture here. All right, we did have a question about the other side of the ball in the game. Brian Pope asked us what we would do with James Cook at this point in the season. This is a game that got away from Buffalo yesterday, and they had to go into Josh Allen, put the team on your back mode and try to bring us back. I get it that the numbers for Cook have been up and down. And I mean, last week it was 12 for 29, but he scored a touchdown. He had a 48-yard catch. So even in a bad game, he had 77 yards and a touchdown. It's kind of hard to argue with that. The prior 2 weeks, he had over 100 scrimmage yards. So look, yesterday, 5 carries, -4 yards, 3 catches for 25. Yeah, it gets you 5-5. You're not happy with it. But where you drafted him in the 6th round, probably. If you drafted early in the summer, it was the 7th round, maybe the 8th. So I think of where you drafted him. If he's your RB2, all these players have down weeks. But this was the first time he saw less than 12 carries in a game. I'm not worried, Anthony. Your thoughts?
No, I'm not worried about James Cook. It's this Buffalo offense and how they play football and how reliant they really are on the quarterback, as you said. James Cook is going to be the most productive running back in this system. I think possibly since Josh Allen has come to town. He's certainly, to me, the most talented. So, yeah, you're going to have your ebbs and flows. But up until this week against Jacksonville, double-digit PPR points to start the year in every game. But he just hasn't really popped yet. He had that 19.9 out in week 2 against Vegas. I think what people are looking for, more of those big pop games. And they'll come. I just don't know when. Even in that one, 17 for 123, 4 for 36, but he doesn't score. People are waiting for that 150 total yards, 5 catches, and touchdown type of stat line.
What was encouraging last week was prior to that, as soon as the ball was inside the 5, it was Latavius Murray or Damian Harris. And that was it. Last week, they got inside the 5 and they gave James Cook a goal line carry. He's not going to get them all. He's not going to get most of them. But the fact they actually put him in a situation there, at least that tells me there's a possibility he can get a couple or a few short touchdowns. He'll get a few from outside the 10-yard line due to his explosive nature. I'm not nervous at all, worried about him. Look, like I said, where you drafted him, he's outplayed his ADP significantly. Yeah. And I expect that. And that's the way we got to frame it. I mean, he's in your lineup. You had an expectation when you drafted him, and he should be meeting that expectation. One more question before we move on.
So he gets the Giants next week, so everything's going to be fine.
Everything will be fine. And Brian says he'll be patient. Yeah, I like that, Brian. Just a random kid asks, should I trade Devontae Smith? Go ahead, Anthony.
Whew. Depending on what you think you could get for Devonta Smith at this time. Usually in season, I like moving off players coming off of a big game. And Devonta Smith, we know, like I know he's a second, maybe third round pick at best in fantasy drafts, but I never really viewed him as that week to week consistent guy. I think his production could be a little bit erratic, almost like a more expensive Mike Williams. And now, like Devonta Smith, 2 out of his past 3 games with fewer than 6.8 PPR points, 3 out of his past 4 games with 5 targets. That's not second round ADP. And I think if you're trying to move off Devonta Smith, you got the Jets coming in week 6, and that defense, you might have to sit and wait until Miami. Maybe he goes off there and you can sell high, but I don't know if you're going to get a fair return right now.
100%. And here's another thing about Devontae Smith. I really think, again, it's the offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson realized that the offense was not as dominant early in the season as they probably should have been given the weapons they had. Okay, everywhere, offensive line, running back, receivers, tight end, it wasn't going. And I think he's feeling his way out each week. And the one thing I think he settled on is, all right, A.J. Brown has to be a major part of this. Remember, last year, the second half of the season, Devontae Smith was regularly out-targeting A.J. Brown. I always thought that was wrong. I'm like, how the hell do you not give A.J. Brown the most targets? He is literally, if he was seeing Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson level targets, he is as good as those guys. And I'm not going to back off on that statement for a second. A.J. Brown is not a worse player than Justin Jefferson. They're different. They can beat you in different ways. But believe me, Anthony, do you have a disagreement with that at all?
No, not at all. A.J. Brown is a legitimate alpha in the NFL and in this offense. And I like Devonta Smith, really nice player, but A.J. Brown is somebody who I can believe can do it all. And just the way you just said about A.J. Brown, if you give him that type of like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson volume, I always feel the same way about Dallas Goedert. He's always been a top fantasy tight end, doesn't get the volume. If you put, it might be crazy to say Dallas Goedert in that Kelsey role with Patrick Mahomes, I think we get Kelsey numbers. That's how I feel about Goddard. So Philly, their pass catchers are completely loaded.
Yes, and again, it's just a matter of week to week. But in terms of trading him, like Anthony said, see what you get for him. But I don't think you're going to have this massive ceiling season. And we were drafting him around pick 20-ish. And my rest of season rankings, I don't have him there. I don't see him as that player right now. 8 to 10 spots lower, and that's significant. All right, we will move on. The Chiefs offense, Anthony, it's okay. They're scoring points. Not a problem with that. Travis Kelce missed a little time in game with an ankle, came back and scored a touchdown. But the lack of receiver weapons, it is looking like it's a problem. And if they're playing in a playoff game, if let's say the Bills are humming, any of these big teams that can put up points, well, there aren't many of them. But if that happens right now, I know Patrick Mahomes is Superman, and I never do doubt him. But the numbers haven't been stratospheric. And I do think it's the wide receivers putting a drag on him. Thoughts?
What's wild to me is they had very similar wide receiver personnel last year, and Patrick Mahomes had a career year, won a Super Bowl. And I don't think losing Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson, I don't think that moves the needle that much. Something does seem off with the Kansas City Chiefs right now. Now, matchup, you look at their schedule, a couple of tough matchups in there, but then it's going to open up. You had Minnesota yesterday, Denver, Chargers, Denver, Miami, bye week, and then Philly. They're all roughly like bottom 12, 13 easy matchups. to throw the football on. I called it last week on my show, by Rashee Rice. I think the Rashee Rice breakout, if you look at this upcoming schedule, last week against the Jets, he only had 5 targets. They were the second most on the team. Had another 5 yesterday. He goes 433 and a touchdown. I think there's something here with Rashee Rice, and now's the time to buy because he could potentially take off.
100%. And they need somebody to step up, and he has shown that ability right now. And I think he's going to get more trust by the week, as you're saying. So there's again a last opportunity. Go ahead and now in competitive leagues, obviously he's rostered. Throw an offer out there. See if you can make an acquisition. Maybe somebody's disappointed that he hasn't really gone off. He scored, but we'll see with that. Hey, if you can get you a free RotoWire trial, no credit card needed. Just go to rotowire.com/Jim. Set you up in a couple of days of free access. Also, Anthony, on Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL, I've been putting up the player props, and what I'm doing on there is I'm linking our betting promos. Yeah. So we need a betting promo. Go ahead and go there. Anthony, anything else about promos?
No, anything sports betting, just go to the RotoWire sports betting section on the RotoWire website. You can also, like for somebody like BetMGM, go to sign up with the bonus code RotoBonus, and you get your choice of 2 different welcome offers you can choose from. And we're partnered with all the top sports books in the industry. So come if you're not sports betting yet and you wanted to try it, now's the best time. In RotoWire, we can get you some terrific welcome offers if you're a new user.
Yep, exactly. So try us out, check out our promos, but we definitely will set you up for success. One last question, Brian Pope has Rashee Rice or Kadarius Toney?
Oh, it's Rashee Rice, and it's not close for me.
Yeah, and there are leagues where after Toney had the preseason injury, he fell from the 6th or 7th round into the 10th or 11th. And at that point in drafts, I didn't have a problem in a couple of them taking a later flyer on Toney at that cost. But right now, I won't even put him near a starting lineup. Is it possible things turn around, or have the injuries stacked up and they're just not getting him going? What's going on?
How I view this Kansas City wide receiver group, when you looked at it, you brought up the offseason price point of Toney, and I'll throw Sky Moore. We've already seen almost like a full season plus of Sky Moore in this offense. We've seen a bunch of games out of Toney. And, I don't think anything we've seen from them outside of scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and that's obviously not enough to draft a guy in the 7th, 8th round, wherever they were going. And then you have this Rashee Rice comes in with hype, 4 or 5 rounds cheaper. In these situations, I'll always go with the unknown. Because the known we have of Toney and Sky Moore, it's not impressing me. Same thing with MBS. So I'm completely out on the prices. Now, obviously, maybe you can pick up Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney on waivers. Maybe, because they're being dropped. Yeah, maybe I'll roster them, but not if I have to pay a significant cost. I just don't see it. It's look at all the years of Mecole Hardman hype that went nowhere, and he was a healthy scratch for the Jets yesterday, I believe.
Anthony, when Mecole Hardman got drafted, I was livid about people in fantasy. They were Tyreek Hill. I was supposed to have a suspension that year, a few games, and people are saying, "Oh yeah, he's Tyreek Hill. We're plugging him right in." I'm like, dude, there are tons of fast guys out there. Tons of them.
Not gonna lie, I was one of them based on that narrative. If Tyreek's out, Mecole Hardman's plug and play, and boy, was I wrong.
And that, again, no knock on anybody that did it. It was a logic point. We were taking point A, but I'm like, look, when there's an outlier out there, and Tyreek Hill is an outlier, you just don't take somebody off the scrap pile and say, you know what, you're fast, you're an outlier too. No, outliers are outliers for a reason. John Ross in that case would have had a few thousand or 1,500 yard seasons, and we know that didn't happen. But anyway, no harm, no foul. But just remember that speed is great. Speed's a beautiful thing, but not all players can use that speed effectively in the NFL. Let's quickly touch on a couple players before we break down the Monday night game, Anthony. So we get the great return of Cooper Kupp. He gets 12 targets. Puka Nacua gets 11. Kupp goes 8 for $118. 95 of those yards were in the first half. Kupp a couple of miscommunications. That was rare between him and Stafford. There could have been a lot more on the plate. Nakua, 71 yards and a touchdown. Strong game, 20 PPR points. Kupp, right there, 19.8 as well. So where are you ranking both of them rest of schedule roughly?
I mean, you didn't even bring up Tutu Atwell.
No.
Who got into the end zone yesterday. This Rams offense is cooking right now. Matthew Stafford appears to be healthy. All, the top of the receivers on this depth chart, especially now with Cooper Kupp back. I get, the game yesterday got away. Fantasy football wise, you can make a case that all three of these receivers, certainly Kupp and Puka Nacua, obviously Kupp top 12. I would say Nacua top 20, but now Tutu Atwell, he could be a fringe wide receiver too, to me. So I like all three of these receivers, and this is a Rams offense that we know Matthew Stafford can throw it 40, 50 times a game. So there's a lot of targets to go around where all of these guys could be heavily active in fantasy football.
Now, and again, no shade on that. It makes sense. Atwell, I did say that his targets would automatically go down, and he was getting 9 a game. It went down to 5. And he did catch a touchdown, but it was 2 catches for 9 yards and a touchdown. And I agree with you. He has great speed, and McVay knows how to leverage that speed. But we already see it. Cooper Kupp was getting open deep too. So it's not like Atwell's and believe me, I'm not comparing their speed, okay? But Cooper Kupp is one of those football players. Yeah. He knows how to get open deep. We've seen it throughout time. Not every deep guy is fast. They just know how to win. And so, like Anthony said, maybe Atwell still comes up and does really well. But that target drain will be a little bit of a draw on him. But like Anthony said, go ahead and consider still using him because Sean McVay, there are no limits to what he can do in getting people open. So I do love that. Now, Tyler Higbee took a hit. He was another one down to 3 targets. Now, that might not be every game. But again, if Nacua and Kupp are going to be primary receivers, they both do much of their damage in the intermediate area, middle of the field. Now, of course, there's outside catches too, but a lot of their damage is there. And that is going to hurt Tyler Higbee. Anything on that?
Yeah, coming into the year, I was really high on Higbee. I think a lot of us were because that projected volume and then Tutu Atwell and obviously primarily Puka Nacua happened. So, Higbee, it's the tight end position in fantasy is very erratic. And Higbee now, to me, is probably going to be a matchup play.
100% of that. Now, one more player. Breece Hall. His snap share was not crazy high, but it was one of those things where the player gets a lot of touches when he's on the field. So his snap share was 52%, but he gets 22 carries and 3 targets, 194 total yards, finds the answer. It was Denver, but I don't care. Breece Hall, when he's going, we've seen it. He could torch any defense. Week 1, Buffalo, 80-yard run. And if you get him the ball enough, even Zach Wilson allowing defenses to all creep up to the line. What that does for Breece Hall, if he breaks that first line of defense, good God, this guy could go a long time easily. Thoughts on Hall going forward?
I'm one of those guys that was all in on Breece Hall this year, injury or not. Obviously, a little bit of a rough start because of the quarterback situation. But what we've seen from Breece Hall yesterday, they were unleashing him, and we got 22 for $177 and 1. He also caught 3 for 17, 28 PPR points. If this is how they're going to use Breece Hall, and no offense to Dalvin Cook doesn't look the same. He hasn't. This should be Breece Hall's backfield in its entirety. He's a locked and loaded RB1.
Dalvin Cook played 17% of the snaps. Michael Carter played 31% of the snaps. 3 targets, no targets for Cook. So what that's telling me right now, and Michael Carter had 3 targets to 1 over Cook the prior week. Before then, it was an advantage toward Cook. But in the last 2 weeks, I think Michael Carter is that third down receiving back. Not that Breece Hall can't do that. And maybe Breece Hall will eventually see a ton of snaps. But as long as they're still managing his snap count, Michael Carter, it's not a high ceiling. He's less than 30 yards in each of the games he's played, but he will be the receiving down back for now, it looks. All right, let's break down the Monday night game. But before, remember, RotoWire Fantasy Football Live is on 5 days a week, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're off on Wednesday and Thursday. Remember, the start, sit show every week on Sunday, 11 a.m. and right where you're watching it now. And we will give you the why so you can make your best lineup decision. So if you say player A, player B, we just don't say player B. We give you the background so you make that great decision. Anthony, Monday Night Football. Raiders are 1.5 favorites at home against the Packers. The total on this game is 45.5. The line, I am correct on that line, right? It is Raiders minus 1.5, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so now, injury-wise, left tackle David Bakhtiari is on the injured reserve for the Packers. Inside linebacker Devondre Campbell's up. One injury for the Raiders. Now, Devontae Adams, I expect to play. But the big injury, Nate Hobbs, who's their best corner, he's out. So let's start, first of all, with the Raiders side of the ball. So, Anthony, the line has been better than expected this year. The tackles played well last year. They're even getting a little bit of a boost on the interior, so they're getting some protection. And Jimmy G did have the concussion, but he's getting some decent protection. With Devondre Campbell out for the Packers, that's part of their pressure package. And Rashawn Gary is still working his way back from an injury. So this could be a game where Jimmy G's kept clean. And Jair Alexander is a game time decision. He's missed time already. So all this said, I think this is a spot. And we know the Packers are not good against the run. The three guys who are Devontae, Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs, they could get going here. What are your thoughts on the Raiders offense in this matchup?
You know, all of the Packer injuries that you're noting, this is really good news if you're Josh Jacobs or Devontae Adams, especially fantasy manager. Jacobs last week finally got going, and I heard a stat this morning, I think it was on the NFL Network, where Josh Jacobs, the past 2 years, September versus October, they were calling him Mr. October. So you get Green Bay's run defense, which was already a top 5 easy matchup for fantasy running backs. You got to factor in the injuries. This could be one of those Josh Jacobs big time games. He definitely hammers anytime touchdown score prop. And then even for Devontae Adams, it's a revenge game. It's his old team. I think this is another one where I like playing the revenge game narratives, especially from a betting and fantasy point of view. So I like those two more than Jacoby Myers.
So other side of the ball, the Packers, you mentioned earlier, the offensive line, besides Bakhtiari, who's out, they're getting healthier. Elton Jenkins, left guard, is back, and he's a very good player. They do have depth across that line. So the Bakhtiari injury may not be as catastrophic as we thought it was. However, Green Bay does it. 4th round, 5th round linemen, they pan out. I don't get it. But anyway, they're blocking extremely well. Really, they only have to worry about Max Crosby, and Max Crosby is a problem. But that's one guy. The rest of their defense is not good. Now, coverage-wise, Raiders have been patching it together and doing decently, but with no Nate Hobbs, this is a real problem. And Aaron Jones, they list him questionable. He played a week ago Thursday, but limited snaps. He's going to have to be a part of this run game because A.J. Dillon is toast to me. He gets no yardage. They run him at the goal line. He can't score. In week 1, they ran him twice at the goal against the Bears. Couldn't get in. Oh, let's bring in Aaron Jones. He walks in. I don't even understand why Dillon, other than Jones being hurt, I don't see why he's getting more than a few snaps a game to give him a breather, but that is what it is. How do you see the Packers and Christian Watson back and hopefully full this week? How do you see the Packers offense shaping up against the Raiders defense?
You know, the issue with the Packers offense is that it seems to produce the most during garbage time when they're playing catch up because Jordan Love early, it doesn't, like, especially last week, he looked way off. And then he turns it on in the second half, and that's really good for fantasy. But I think you hit the nail on the head with Aaron Jones. I never understood for years all the A.J. Dillon hype. This should and is the Aaron Jones show. This offense should be running through Aaron Jones. Even when Rodgers was there, this offense played its best when Aaron Jones was getting going. So he needs to be healthy and he needs to be featured in this game if the Packers are going to have a shot, because I really like the Raiders to win and cover.
So that gets us to the prediction. So the Raiders to win and cover. I am nervous about that 1.5 point line. Call it weird. I think I actually have the Raiders winning 24-23. So I'm going to take the money line. Just give me the money line. The Raiders are the one team. if one team is going to win and not cover a 1.5 point line, it's the flipping Raiders. And that's a subjective statement, Anthony. There's no analysis to that. It's just they seem like they find the way to screw people over whenever they can. It's probably a terrible thing to say, but you're confident that they're going to cover that line. And if they're going to win 90% of the time, that means you're going to cover a 2-point spread. What kind of score are you looking at here?
I could see, Monday Night Football, Jordan Love does move the football. The Raiders defense isn't exactly great. Neither is Green Bay's. This could be a sneaky higher scoring game, like maybe in that 24-21, 27-24 range.
So quick change. I did last night. I put the numbers on the spread on the show sheet. It's 2.5 now. And it went from 45.5 to 46.5. So, but you still are a field goal there. And I'm with you on the over. I think this game does go over. Now, at 45.5, I had it going 24-23. It was like a 1.5 over, but it still would be over that. I am inclined. So if I'm going to do my 2-team parlay, I'm going to do over and the money line on the Raiders. Final pick for you.
So you're going over in the money line. I would take if you want to juice the odds up a little bit, I would add a Josh Jacobs touchdown to that.
Now,
last week, my anytime touchdown score,
God.
If I'm doing a 3-team touchdown score parlay, and you can, I think my 2 confident ones would be Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. If you want to, I think there's a same game parlay super boost on FanDuel, where if you have a 3-leg same game parlay, they make the odds even better. So if you want to do an all touchdown parlay, I would go Adams, Jacobs, Aaron Jones.
So on DraftKings, they have a 50% profit boost for any Packers Raiders bet. The bet I'm making, Anthony, is I'm going to find the exact number here on Devontae Adams. Last night, they did not have a yardage prop for him, but today I saw the yardage prop. I'm trying to find this here. Was at, where the heck did it go on me? It was at 78.5 yards. You know what? This is a revenge game. His shoulder might be hurt. He's playing the Packers.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he left on bad terms. He wanted out.
Yeah.
But I still think he wants to show the Packers. I just think that's in his DNA. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to make my bet with the 50% profit boost, minus 115 odds, Adams over 78.5 yards. Do you think he gets there?
Yeah, as long as there's no setbacks, this should be and Jimmy Garoppolo throwing him the football because like Jimmy's not great for fantasy as a quarterback, but he can support top end weapons. So I think that's an easy play.
Oh, I love it. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
You can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru and my work at faceoff.com and also at RotoWire.
Yeah, like I said, Anthony, you got to follow Anthony's show, the FF Faceoff. He definitely does great football. And you hear it here. You know it because you're here every Monday. Anthony will be here every Monday throughout the season with us for this show. Anthony, always appreciate you and your time. Love your football analysis. Everybody out there, enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully your fantasy wins are produced if you need points. And we will talk to everyone